when you talked to the SE manager, he gave you some advice. But what was the interview process like, considering you're moving internally? Was it
Yeah.
any different from an external move?
It probably was because the product that I was working on at the time, it was actually one of the better performing products. It was still being sold, of course, and it was one of the better performing products in the portfolio, which the pre-sales guys and girls were working on. So I was coming in as an expert in that product to switch over departments, and that transition was much more smooth for me than it could have been for if you're changing companies, for example, because you've got the tech skills already there. You probably have a lot of the soft skills. It's really just about making that transition on, changing your way of selling to the volume message and selling, and just putting your pre-sales hat on as opposed to just having the support hat on now.
Before you got there, like, I'm sure you talked to a few people in the interview process, right?
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
there an interview, or did they just give you the offers like, "Hey, we want you. Here you go"?
Oh, no, no, no. So I had to do an interview. So I had to go over to London for the interview. I did speak with a couple of the pre-sales guys that were in the team as well, and yeah, they all give me good feedback. And I didn't want to hear just the good sides of the role. I said, tell me everything. I want to hear what it's like day to day. I want to hear the good sides. I want to hear the bad sides of the job. I don't want to just walk in the job without hearing what the actual reality is like. So they did tell me what the harder things were, or what the differences was as well, that you have to change over. The value side, the value selling part of that is definitely something that has to change in your mind when you're moving over. It's not necessarily how everything works. That's useful to know from a pre-sales side, but what you really need to describe is, why it works on answering the so what, in a sense, as opposed to just the how all the time. So yeah, just changing your mindset, and also including the storytelling aspect as well, because if you're in support, you're not necessarily a storyteller. You will be able to reference some other customers if you like, but the art of storytelling, getting that value across, that's something that you need to learn when you're making that transition as well. Plus, there is a lot of support engineers who may be introverted in some sense. I would consider myself an introvert to some degree, and there's a lot of support engineers, and they might be happy with where they currently are, and they might be happy with the current exposure they have in terms of getting in front of customers. Whereas if you're moving over to pre-sales, you have to be in front of customers more often, as in physically in front of them more often, and you have to get used to that public speaking aspect, plus also dealing with large audiences, with conferences and workshops as well. So that's also something that you have to take into account. And this is all feedback that I was getting from the pre-sales people when I was going into that interview process as well.
And how did that help you figure out if you want the job? How did you know you want to become an SE to begin with, to go after that?
Because I'd watched a number of demos. I did like the sound of the role. I was familiar with all of the different aspects that were needed, and it sounded like a more exciting role to me than what I was currently doing. So that's the reason why I wanted to move over. Plus, just the personal growth aspect as well. If you're actually not used to being in front of audiences, large audiences, you're not used to speaking in front of people at conferences. If you can actually just force yourself into those situations, you can actually sort of condition yourself, if you like, to be used to that. Whereas if you stay in support, you're not going to get that support exposure. I personally wasn't going to get that exposure by getting into those scenarios, so I wasn't going to be able to grow from that aspect, if you like. So that was another reason why I thought it was a good reason to move over, just for that personal growth aspect, and to almost knock out that sort of introverted nature as well.
Okay, and you've been doing this for 5 years, 6 years now? No, a lot. 8 years.
So it's that middle role was a bit of both. So it's probably 4 or 5 years essentially in the
4 or 5
pre-sales
years.
side. Yeah, and then there was that role in between was sort of a bit of both. So there was a bit of overlap there as well. So yeah, I'm very used to both departments, and I certainly don't regret making the transition. The pre-sales role has definitely been my favorite role to date. It's the support was great, but the pre-sales, in my opinion, has been a much better role, and it's better for your own development as well, and be able to build up both your technical and soft skills as well.